Welcome to Your Voice with Dr. Susan, a safe place to let your voice be heard, where personal stories are shared that break myths and assumptions. You will hear conversations that can motivate you in your own life to accomplish your dreams. On today's show, we will be hearing from a banker who gave up his day job to make people laugh for a living. We will also be hearing from a singer-songwriter who came to New York City following a tragic event to pursue a career in music. Hi, and welcome to Your Voice with Dr. Susan. On today's show, we're going to be a little bit lighter and a little bit humorous because we have with us Shaun Eli. Shaun is a stand-up comedian. And Shaun was not always a stand-up comic. He's here to talk to us about comedy and also his journey into comedy. Welcome, Shaun.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. So, stand-up comic.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, in these days, we can really use a little comedy. I think we all can use a little comedy. But I'd love to hear from you. You were not always a comic, right?
No, I was a comedy writer, but that was a part-time job where I was working in banking during the day.
You were working in banking?
Yes.
Wow. Banking, and you were writing comedy?
Right. I was writing jokes for late-night TV, freelance.
Wow. So how long were you in banking for, and when did you make the shift to full-time comedy?
I was in banking for about 20 years, and I overlapped for 6 years, and then about 8 years ago, I said goodbye to the day job.
And how did you do that? Like, what did you always know?
I walked into my boss's office and said, "See you later."
Okay.
Haven't seen him since, so I guess I lied.
Wow. When you were a kid, did you always want to be a stand-up comedian? Or
I thought about it, but I also never wanted to be a performer. I had friends who were actors, and I said I would never want to do that.
And now?
Now I do want to do it, so It's what I do.
So what made you make the shift? You said that you were writing comedy.
I was writing jokes, and I went on a date with somebody who said, "Hey, why don't you try stand-up comedy?" And I said, "Because I don't want to be a performer." And she had just taken a comedy class.
And was that before you had left banking?
Right. I was a banker at the time.
Okay.
And she said, "Why don't you take a class? I had just taken a class. You should take a class." And I did and started performing. And 6 years later, I said goodbye to the bank.
And performing?
Yeah.
And just went straight to full-time?
Well, I overlapped for 6 years. I was a banker during the day, and I did stand-up comedy at night.
And now?
And now I sleep, write, market during the day, and tell jokes at night.
Now, you really then found something that you liked other than what you were doing. Did you enjoy banking when you were banking, or?
I liked it. I didn't love it, so I was happy to get rid of it.
So there's a lot of people that are doing jobs that they don't really enjoy. And sometimes people are afraid to leave what they're doing to really explore something that they really love, or they think they may love. What advice might you give to them in terms of making that transition?
Well, I don't want to tell people live your dream and quit your day job just to try something else, but if there's a way you can overlap or try something out or take a long vacation or a leave of absence or just be willing to give it a try.
So it sounds like that's what you did because you had those years of overlapping.
Right. Fortunately, there were jobs that, the time didn't conflict.
Okay. Now, for a lot of us that don't do stand-up comedy, it looks both scary and it looks, I won't say easy, but you get up there and you're just telling jokes. And so what's it really like to be a stand-up comic?
It's scary. Well, some people have no stage fright. I definitely started out with stage fright.
How did you get over that?
Time, practice, more confidence.
Did you ever have a bad night or
yeah, of course.
And how
everybody has a bad day at work.
Right. But standing up in front of an audience and not getting some of the laughs that you are hoping to get can be very deflating.
Yeah.
So how did you continue on when you had those experiences?
Well, there's a beauty of starting at 40 instead of 20, that there's some wisdom that comes with age.
Which is?
So I think if you're 20 years old and you have a bad night, you're miserable for a week. And if you're 40 years old and you have a bad night, you say, well, I had a bad night. What can I learn from it? What went wrong? What can I avoid doing wrong in the future? And the hell with it, I have another show tomorrow. Oh,
that's great. I hope that all 40-year-olds take that advice, because I know some 40-year-olds that can't do that. But I think that's really good. Yeah. So what keeps you going?
I love my job. I get to make people laugh for a living, and I get paid for it. I mean, I can't think of anything better than that.
Right now, it's a very difficult time for many people in this political atmosphere on both sides of the table, no matter who you like or where you're feeling about where our country is right now, it's tough. And so, I'm always thinking that this is a really good time for comedy, that we really need that comic relief. Are you finding that?
That's what people are telling me. I'm not really sure. I think attendance might be up a little bit, but it's hard to tell. It's kind of interesting, though. I did a show right after the election at a theater in Delaware, and the director, one of the comics, basically went off on Trump and ranted about Trump. He was definitely anti-Trump. And the director of the theater said to me, hey, next time you come back here, don't do any political comedy, because I got emails telling me that you shouldn't, the Trump people were upset.
Right.
And so the next time I did a show there, I said to my colleagues, hey, we got to avoid political comedy.
Unless, of course, you insult everyone.
Well,
right,
either way,
some comics
you
do.
can insult everybody, but people are still going to be offended at the part that they didn't like. But what happened was we went back there a couple of months later, and we did Q&A after the show, which is something that we like to do, is talk to the audience after the show. And the first question we got was, why didn't you do any political jokes? And fortunately, one of my colleagues had the good sense to say, didn't you come here to get away from that?
That was a good response.
Yeah, I thought.
Yeah. So what's your favorite kind of setting or venue to do your work in?
I'm fortunate that I can work in theaters, and it's a little bit more upscale. You don't have people serving food or drinks during the show. The audiences are paying attention. They all want to be there. And I think that's my favorite setting. But comedy clubs are fun too.
Now, you write your own material?
Yeah, most comics do.
And you also write or you have written for other people? Do you still write for other people?
No, I used to sell jokes to late night TV, but I don't do that anymore.
And what was that like? Like, how do you find that writing for other people?
It was fun. You have to write for somebody else's voice, which is a little bit complicated. You have to think, how would this sound coming out of their mouth? But what I would do is, this is years ago, I would fax in jokes, and if they used it, I got paid, but I wouldn't know they were using my joke until I watched the show at night.
And so so originally you were writing for others because you did not want to be a performer, you had said. And so it wasn't until your date took a class in comedy. What kind of class did you take?
There are a lot of people who give stand-up comedy classes in New York, and they're all pretty much the same. They're usually, 7 or 8 weeks, and the conclusion of the class is a performance at a comedy club.
And then you discovered that you would do your own material at that point?
Yeah, well, comics, when people start out, they all do their own material. It's only if you're reaching the stage where HBO wants a new hour every year or two that you end up hiring writers.
And do you then, so that was a shift for you because you never wanted to be a performer.
Right.
You then were writing for someone else or other people.
Right.
And then now suddenly you're performing and you're writing your own material.
Yeah, writing material for me. And it was
for you, so was
well,
that
it's easier in a way because I'm writing for my voice and everything I say comes out of my own mouth. So in a way it was easier, but it was also different because when you're writing late night TV monologue jokes, everything is 2 or 3 sentences.
You brought a clip for us today. So we're just going to show, I think, a minute or two of that. So you want to set this up? Where was this?
Sure, it was the Emlyn Theater in Mamaroneck. And Mamaroneck, New York, Lower Westchester. About 20 miles and a 12-hour drive north of here, I guess is the way to describe it. And this is actually interesting because the second half of this joke, the Supreme Court part, is a joke that I wrote on the way to a gig. And one of the best things I think about my job is thinking of a joke literally on the drive to a show and trying it out when it's fresh but also raw and seeing if it works.
So let's take a listen and then maybe we can talk more about that. So, okay, here we go. Roll it.
My name is Shaun Eli and I'm very happy to be here. But I'm a New Yorker and we're easy to please. We are. All we need to be happy is a good parking space. I had an interesting drive here. You may remember that a couple of years ago, the Supreme Court decided that corporations are legally the same as people. You remember this? So on the drive here, I threw 2 stock certificates into the passenger seat, drove here in the carpool lane.
That was really funny. Wow,
Thanks.
that was funny. Yeah. So you were saying before we saw the clip that you wrote the second half of that on your way?
On the way to a gig because I was in a non-carpool lane wondering, hey, I've got only me in the car. It's not fair that, of course, people in the carpool lane going faster than I was. And then it occurred to me, being a New Yorker, I'm used to looking for loopholes. And I thought, what could I do with just me in the car to get into the carpool lane?
Now, it's interesting. Some people are just funny naturally, and there are people that are, make people laugh, but they don't have written material. You're doing it professionally, and is all of your stuff written prior? Like, are you rehearsing doing stand-up in terms of the full show? You know exactly what you're going to do? Or do you change it in the moment, and is some of it, are you just doing it off the cuff and more of impromptu?
It really varies because some stuff is clearly scripted and some stuff is spontaneous. If I'm talking to somebody in the audience, it's called crowd work, where you just talk
Crowd work?
Crowd work.
And what is that exactly?
It's the term of art for just talking to the audience in a conversation. The people in the front row, hey, where are you from? What do you do for a living? It's the beginning. I don't understand the psychology of it, but at the beginning of the show, you have to make people understand the process and feel welcome, because it's an odd thing for somebody just to stand on stage and tell jokes. They're lit, you're sitting in the audience, and you're in the darkness, and you just listen to them and laugh. It's a weird dynamic. So crowd work is a way of starting a show where you just walk out and you just have a conversation with the audience.
So it must be like bringing the person in so that they actually feel part of it. Really what you're doing, you're bringing people into your show. They become then a part of the act, even if they don't say anything, because, I've noticed that sometimes when audience members are brought on stage, the audience loves that. They love watching one of them being on stage, and it reminds me of that a little bit when you say that you're having the, talking to audience members.
Yeah, in stand-up, we definitely frown on bringing people on stage. It's a different
but it's
dynamic.
that same side, but
Right,
it's
a
the same
magician might do
psychology.
it.
Yeah. I've always wondered when I've gone to shows, when I see people doing that, or I see it on TV, when you ask the audience a question, do you already have most of like the answers that if somebody says this, because after a while, people usually say common
the same thing.
things,
It's a good observation. For instance, what do you do for a living? You're going to get the same 10 answers over and over again because there are common occupations. You're going to get teacher, you're going to get unemployed, you're going to get retired, you're going to get, stay-at-home mom or dad, you're going to get, police officer, firefighter. In New York, you'd have a lot of lawyers and bankers. So we pretty much have answers. If we're any good, we have answers for, or comments on that. But if you get somebody who's, let's say, a field artillery specialist stationed in Korea, it's going to be a little more complicated to come up with a joke.
Now, given that you do this professionally, when you're at parties or you're socially at different events, do people say to you, okay, you're a comic, make me laugh?
Right, and I say, come to a show.
And are you funny socially, or is it is it more about being up there?
It's two different skills, being funny for your friends and being funny on stage in front of an audience that's expecting somebody to make them laugh. Two very different skills. And I'm not saying one is harder or more important than the other, but they're very different.
Well, in one, somebody is not expecting you to be funny, and the other, they're actually paying money usually to see that, so the expectation's there.
And I have some colleagues who are brilliant on stage and off stage. They're quiet and unassuming and never say anything funny. And I have friends who are hilarious who would never be able to step on stage and tell a joke.
For people who just know you through watching you on stage and didn't know you socially, or even if they knew you socially, what is something that somebody might not even think about you or expect that they would be surprised to know about you?
That I'm shy.
Shy?
Yeah, I think a lot of comics are shy.
Really interesting. Shy.
I think a lot of people are shy, but when you're on stage, you can be a more exaggerated version of yourself or a more confident version of yourself.
So you don't seem shy right now. So what do you mean by being shy, actually? Like, how does that show itself?
I've gotten over it. I mean, I'm past 40, so it took some work, but I'm comfortable talking to strangers now. But if you'd stopped me at 35 and just said, go to that party and talk to the people on the couch, I would have been horrified.
Wow, that's really interesting. I'm sure a lot of people out there feel the same way. I hear that a lot about people feeling uncomfortable within themselves. If they go to a party, they may have social anxiety. How did you get over that?
I guess same thing, practice and realizing that if I go talk to a stranger, the worst that'll happen is that they don't want to talk to me and I can walk away.
So you consciously practiced that?
Yeah.
So you said, okay, you realized it, I'm uncomfortable, I want to be more comfortable, and what can I do to be more comfortable? So did you test out things? Did you
I practiced talking to people. For example, back when there were, toll booths before Easy Pass, you had to talk to a toll attendant, and I'd say, hi, my name is Shaun when I paid the toll.
But you were conscious of doing that and then use that to feel more and more comfortable.
Right.
It's okay. Because that's a good tip, I think, for our audience, because a lot of people are out there that actually feel really uncomfortable even doing that. But what you're talking about is really using an experience to promote and to help get over certain fears, which
Right.
you said you were very uncomfortable in terms of going into a party.
Yeah.
So that's really, sometimes we do things and we don't even realize we're doing it. What I'm trying to do is break down your process so that what you've done can really help the people that are watching out there that might be experiencing this.
Well, I think you have to have a certain amount of confidence to try things out, but really confidence makes a big difference in a lot of endeavors.
And so what helped you on stage to be more confident?
Well, I had been a comedy writer for a long time before I started stand-up, so I had one advantage over a lot of people, which is I knew my material was good. I also knew that I'd be a terrible performer because most people, when they start out, frankly, stink at performing. And so I wasn't worried about the performing aspect of it because I knew that would come with time. So that made it a lot easier.
Anything that surprised you throughout this journey in terms of performing?
One thing is that all your instincts are wrong.
How so? What do you mean?
Well, like if you're in front of an audience and things aren't going well, the natural instinct is to withdraw and to close off and to step away from the audience and then to rush through your material because it's uncomfortable and you want to get it over with as fast as possible. And that makes it worse. What you have to do is slow down and step forward and become more of what you are, become stronger on stage, and that can win an audience over.
And did you learn that by trial and error, or did someone tell you that? Did you have that initial response for many shows and then you realized that wasn't working, or did you have a mentor that taught you that?
I think that's something most people learn by trial and error. And even if people tell you it, it's really hard to do the opposite of what your body's telling you to do.
Do you tape your shows and watch them?
Yes and maybe, I guess is the answer. I record, and the standard advice they give new comics is record everything because you learn so much by watching yourself.
And what's it like? I know a lot of people, myself included, sometimes it's very hard for us to watch ourselves. So was that a process too? Did you have to get used to watching yourself and
It's
feel comfortable?
horrifying. Just the same way most people don't like listening to their voice when it's recorded. Mm-hmm. It's 10 times worse when you're watching yourself tell jokes on stage.
Has it gotten easier, or it's not?
Gotten easier because I know the audience is reacting well. Here's a weird thing. You put a camera in the back of the room, and the best place to put a camera is the worst place to put a microphone, because the back of the room captures me loudly because there are speakers pointing in that direction, but it doesn't capture the audience laughter because the audience is facing the other way.
Oh, that's an interesting point. So what do? Dual mics? Do you then put another camera some closer to you?
I usually, if it's something I want to send out, like the clip that you just saw, I put a microphone on stage pointing at the audience. But if it's just for me to review, there's no need to do that. But then I'm watching a video where there's pauses where people are laughing, but you don't hear the strong laughter that you would in a
So what would be, is there a venue or some type of either show, or what would be your ideal or your goal or fantasy kind of gig to do?
Madison Square Garden, Shea Stadium. But then,
so a large venue.
Yeah. Well, you think about it. If you tell a laugh in front of 100 people, you have a couple of seconds of laughter and then the laughter dies down and you go on to the next joke. If you're making 10,000 people laugh, you're getting a lot more laughter. It takes a much longer time for it to trickle down, and you feel so much more powerful.
Are there comics that really sell out like those large venues?
I don't know about Shea Stadium, but Madison Square Garden, sure. You can have Louis C.K. or Amy Schumer.
Are there any, you're bringing up a good point in terms of, are there any comics that you enjoy and have inspired you?
There's a lot of people. I could name a lot of comics, and half of them you wouldn't have heard of.
Well, how do you know that now?
Because there are so many really funny people in
Sure, I
New York.
haven't heard of them. Yeah, yeah. And other than that, what about any other kind of venues or TV or movies? Do you look to, I know a lot of comics that wanted to, their idea or their dream would be to have a late night show.
Well, it's unlikely they're going to have me hosting The Tonight Show, although that would have been nice. On the other hand, you're a skilled interviewer. I don't know that that's one of my strong points. I would like the opening monologue and the sketches.
Well, that's what I mean,
an
opening monologue.
Yeah, that part. Okay. But I'm not interested in acting. I'm the rare comic who says, I don't want a sitcom. I want to tell jokes on stage.
So if there's, in our audience, if there was somebody that's out there thinking, wow, I really want to be a stand-up comedian, this is what I want to do, this is what I have a passion for, what kind of advice would you want to give them?
I would say take a class. And the interesting thing is, it's a perennial debate among comics, can you learn to be funny? And some say, yes, take a class. Others say, no, you have to just do it by trial and error.
Do you
can't learn to be funny.
Do you think that people can learn to be funny?
Oh, absolutely.
You do?
In the perennial debate between yes, classes are good and no, classes are bad, almost everybody who says no has never taken a class. And, actors, when they're not acting, are studying acting. Singers and dancers, all are taking classes. you can't make somebody funny, but you can make them funnier. You can teach them how to write a joke. You can improve their skills. There's a lot to be benefited from taking a class.
It's been great having you on the show, and you're really needed right now in our society.
Thanks.
So I think that at times we can all use a little humor, and perhaps we'll all come and see your show.
Well,
you
can see my show. You can go to brainchampagne.com.
Brainchampagne.com
Brainchampagne.com is my website. It lists shows. There's videos there. There's also 50,000 words worth of jokes on the site, which is a lot of jokes. To give you an idea, a novel is 100,000 words, so it's half a novel's worth of jokes.
Wow, that is a lot. Well, congratulations to you, and good luck on your continued success as a comedian.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on to the show. I am so excited to have in the house a very special guest, Richie Lou. Richie, thank you so much for finally being on this show.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you here.
Finally, it's been a very long time.
I know, and I've watched you play, and I've watched you on other people's shows, so this is a real pleasure to finally get to have you on my show.
And it's a pleasure being here.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about your journey into being a up-and-coming, successful guitar player and singer and performer, and I'm just so excited about your career and the way it's taking off. So I want to share that journey with our audience. So when did you actually start to play?
I started playing around 13.
13. And you're from, because you're not...
I'm from North Carolina.
From North Carolina. So you started playing in North Carolina?
Yes, I started playing down south.
Okay. And how did you first discover, like, did someone just hand you a guitar, or how did that happen?
My mother bought me my first guitar because I wanted it for my birthday. I always wanted to play an instrument.
Oh, cool.
So I got it on my birthday, and I've been playing it ever since. Like, I just taught myself how to play.
You taught yourself? Wow. So as soon as you got it, you knew that was it? That was,
That was it. And then I started singing, and I was always singing when I was little, though. When I was young, and I've always been in tune with music, but once I got the guitar, it's like I found my own little wave, and
wow.
It's like, it means the world to me.
It's like your passion.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's everything. And is anyone in your family musical? Do you come from a musical family?
Well, I used to sing in the choir when I was young, and a lot of my family members have voices, and they sing, and they all sing in church, and I was the head singer in the choir. So.
Oh, you were the head singer in the choir?
Yeah.
That's great. So you're from North Carolina?
Yes.
And 13 you start, and you teach yourself to play, and you start to sing, and now you're in Brooklyn, New York. So how'd you get here?
I was 18 when I got here.
18? And what made you come here?
I came here to pursue my career as a musician and to kind of like carve my own path as a person, because I just came from when I came up here, and my mother had just passed.
Oh,
So
how old were you then?
I was 17 when she passed.
Wow, so that's a big loss.
After that, it took a toll on me. I stayed in North Carolina for almost a year until I finally got enough to like just move and like try to start my own life. So I came here to New York and with my guitar, and I started.
Wow, so did you know anyone in New York? When that was so brave of you.
Yeah, I just took the man journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! And after having that tremendous loss, you just decided
And then
after
I just
a year?
kind of cut a lot of stuff out of my life, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to think about me since nobody else was. You know,
what's wonderful about that is so many people think about doing something and taking that step. What enabled you to really have the courage to really come to New York alone just with your guitar?
I think that's what she would have wanted.
Oh.
She would have wanted me to grow up and be somebody, to teach somebody else what you can be no matter where you're from. So
you have her voice that guides you?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's like that.
That's great. That's beautiful.
And I think about certain things that we used to do, and that's how sometimes when I'm creating music, I can put my all into it and just thinking about making her smile.
Oh, that's such a wonderful inspiration. That is really so beautiful. That really is, and I'm sure she's very, very proud of you.
Yeah.
Have you written specific songs for her, or are they basically...
I do have a song I wrote specifically for her.
For her?
And I wrote it and I sang it to her on her dying bed before she passed away. Because she was in intensive care, You know, she was in the.
Did you know for a long time, or was it sudden?
It wasn't like a normal death. See, like my mother died of brain damage, but it was more like somebody caused it.
Oh, someone caused the...
Right, so it was a whole mix-up there.
Like an accident or violence? Or
Violence.
Violence, oh, that's really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's more, to me, I feel more offended by it than plus as well as hurt by it.
Wow, so did you use your music and creation of
To,
songs
like,
to really cope with that? Because that's a horrible loss.
Usually it started out me coping, and then it became a joy for me to make people laugh and smile, and that's what I wanted to do. So I said, well, if this is what I want to do, then I'm going to take it to the next level. And I took myself out of the situation of being down south, and I took myself amongst people that are faster than me, smarter than me, and I learned from them, and I met people I never knew before.
Wow.
And it was like a big journey. Like I was really out there.
And that's so impressive, because to be that young, to go through the kind of loss that you went through, and then to be able to just open yourself up and learn from others is just fabulous. And you know, I'm thinking about it, your mom gave you your first guitar, and like now she's just a wonderful, she's watching you, she's really with you, and even though she's inspiring you completely along the way, you actually wrote a specific song for her.
Absolutely.
Will you be playing that later on in the show today, or will we be able to see a clip? Or?
I'll be playing my single that just dropped.
Okay.
And it's on iTunes, Amazon.
Oh, that's great.
And it's called I Want You.
I'd be interested, though, in also hearing, what's the name of the song that you wrote for your mom?
It's called Geraldine.
Would you want to play a piece of that, or would we get to see a video of that?
I could play a little bit.
You'll play a little bit of it?
If we have time.
Well, let's make the time, because I think that would be so wonderful to hear that. Just even a little bit of that song, if you're comfortable doing that. Wow, what a great story. Okay, so you came here, and you just opened yourself up, and you allowed yourself to be taught by others, and you've met some great people along the way.
And
so how long have you been playing now?
I've been playing, well,
when did you come to New York?
18.
How old? I don't know how old you are
I'm
now.
24.
24. Wow.
Yeah. So it's like.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't know this. Okay.
I didn't know you were 24.
Okay.
Wow.
11 years.
13, 24, 11. Yeah. I think if that's
Yeah. Something like that.
It's just, your story is just so inspiring, because there are so many people that are going through so much, and yet you really took just an awful situation and just made it beautiful. So what would you want to tell other young people that might have actually gone through a tragedy or are dealing with whatever their specific difficulty is? Because you're really a good role model for so many people.
Well, for young people, I think it is imperative that they just be motivated and believe in what they want, and just stay positive. Because if you don't stay positive and you don't have that mindset to become, then it's going to be rough. And I also want parents to know that really, if your kid wants something to do, even if you want to box, they want to play soccer, whatever they want to do, just inspire them. Just keep let them be who they want to be.
What a beautiful message. That's really beautiful. That's really nice. Is that something that your mom would want you to be telling people? Wow, that's great. And so what's kept you motivated? Because there's, given what you went through, there's plenty of people who really don't stay on the right track. But not only did you stay on the right track, but you were very brave about it. But what keeps you going on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, to just keep going?
I think it's just knowing that I can be somebody to help somebody. As long as I can help somebody, then I have a purpose, and my purpose is to help people and to inspire people. That's my purpose. So,
and you do that through your music and through writing. Is there anything that you would like to share with us, with me, and our viewing audience, that people would be surprised to learn about you? That they wouldn't expect by looking at you and hearing you. And I know you're a little soft-spoken, but what might they be surprised to learn about you?
Well, I can skateboard.
You can skateboard? Is that a hobby?
Kind of.
Kind of? Okay,
I
great.
do kick flips and stuff.
No, you do or you don't?
I can.
You do? You can?
Yeah.
Those, like, I don't skateboard, but those flip things?
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Maybe we'll have to find a little piece of that and show our audience too. I'd like to see that. Besides writing music and performing and skateboarding, I think you do some graphic work as well. Is
Yes,
that right?
I do web design and graphical designing as well. I also do editing for videos and,
Wow, that's
I make
amazing.
mobile apps and things of that nature as
Now,
well.
did you go to school? You just learned by...
I mean, I know I've went to school to do it, and I also have books and things of that nature, and I study. So I'm always a quick study.
You are
and I
so
always,
self-motivated. That
Right.
is just amazing.
and I learn how to do these things that I want to do, and I
right.
use it to my advantage.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
And I would love to hear right now, if you would, you play, I know that one of your hit songs is I Want You. And so I want you to sing right now. So if you would, I want you to play for us. So let's
Okay.
take a listen
Yeah.
as he plays.
Let's have fun. 'Cause I want you. 'Cause I want you. 'Cause I want you, you. 'Cause I want you, just you, babe. 'Cause you're the reason that I'm still alive, that I still strive. I'm here to make it better and to ease your mind. But I got one question, babe. Could you stay tonight? Let me treat you like treasure. It's so rare, it's so fine. 'Cause I want you in your love, hey girl. 'Cause I want you, just you, babe. 'Cause I want you in your love, hey girl. 'Cause I want you, just you, babe. Yeah. Ooh, oh, oh. 'Cause you're the reason that I'm still alive, that I still strive. I'm here to make you wetter and to ease your mind. But I got one question, babe. Could you stay tonight and let me give you that pleasure and show you much delight? 'Cause I want you in your love, hey girl. 'Cause I want you, just you, babe. Ooh, 'cause I want you. It's Richie Lou.
Wow, that was so wonderful.
Thank you.
That was really great. Oh, now I know why it's a hit single. Oh my goodness, that was just so great. And now can you play a little bit of that other song for your mom?
Sure, no problem. Sweet old Geraldine, you're my sweet love, my everything. You're the one that understood me every time I cried. So why did you die? Ooh, now you're sitting above all of the pain, and as the wind blows, you are carried away. So carry on, sweet old Geraldine. You're my sweet love, my everything. Something like that.
Wow, that was so great, Richie.
Thank you.
Oh, I got the chills. That was really beautiful. Wow. You know, I would like to ask this question. What's some of the challenges that you faced along the way coming to New York and, you know, in the music industry? Because I know it's a difficult industry.
Well, a lot of the challenges I coming to New York and in the music industry is that when you're dealing with somebody that's directive and you're dealing with somebody that's trying to model like image control and all of these people that you come in contact with, you have to learn how to be like a chameleon. Like you have to learn how to adapt. You have to learn how to take orders. You have to learn how to be able to understand what other people's perspectives is. And I think in order to like dealing with TV and things of that nature is like a different skill.
And you have to do that while also staying true to yourself.
Stay true to myself.
Because you seem like somebody who is very true to
Right.
oneself. And so that must have been very difficult at times to balance. When do I listen and change my look, for instance, versus what look I want to have, right? So how do you manage that? What have you learned?
Well, I've learned how to basically cope with things that are different, like I'm not used to, and then I look at other person's perspective, and I kind of use that to progress myself as an artist, progress myself as a person, and to like subtly change, because change comes from everywhere, you know. So,
But you also talk to yourself and check in and just to ever like,
Yeah,
you know,
like,
how am I doing,
keep-
and like what you keep it.
I keep a kind of like a journal.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But in my phone.
Oh, in your phone. So you write on your phone?
I write. So
that's great.
So I write
That's
to
great.
myself, and I like kind of just think about what's going on from day to day, and I take it one step at a time. And if I have this and I got this to do, then I know I'm going to do this first, and it's like a schedule. So
That's wonderful. And do you also put like your feelings in there or anything?
Feelings.
Your feelings. I'm a big advocate of writing. I think everybody should write, whether it's on your phone or in a journal. It really helps. You're going to have a wonderful journey ahead of you because you've already done it. And so, what are some of your goals? What are some of your
my
goals?
goals, like from now or into what time?
Both. You anything.
Okay, well, I basically want to like have my own businesses that that help people. Like you know, I want to have venues people can come listen to some music. I want to have food restaurants where people can come and eat. Like I want to just put things out there, but I want to progress as an artist too. So I want to be doing my music and have somebody run it. And that's one of my goals.
But it's really wonderful. What's so impressive to me, especially given your age, is that you so much want to help others And it's a very rare thing to have that right now. We live in a world where people are really out for themselves, and yet you want to give, not only give back, but you want to help others, and that is just so beautiful.
Like other artists that are coming up and they want to come perform, they come perform at my spot. And
that's great. That is just wonderful, because there's so many people that focus on the wrong things in terms of just the money. And what I'm hearing is you're just doing what you love, and you want to help others and be an inspiration. And that is just, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This has been fabulous.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. This has been absolutely great.
I had a wonderful time.
Thank you, thank you. And for anybody that wants to come and see you, they can they Google you at Richie Lou?
Yeah, you can,
Google, like,
anyone that wants to check out my music, go to Facebook right now and type in Richie Lou. That's RICHIELOU. Then you about to go to Instagram and hit me at Richie Lou Music. Then you about to hit me on www.artistcard.com/Richie Lou. You can also purchase my song on Amazon and iTunes.
So people can really find you just by typing in Richie Lou and going to all those places, and I hope they do. And I Google you, and then I hope that everybody goes to see you live, because you're just a wonderful performer.
Thank you.
And I just look forward to seeing all the places that you go to, because I know you are successful.
Thank you.
And you're going to continue this beautiful journey. And thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for watching another episode of Your Voice with Dr. Susan.
Donald Trump is going to probably still be president in 2020 because impeachment requires a Congress that will do it. Democrats controlled Congress when Richard Nixon was impeached. There were just enough Republicans who said, we'll side with them, that we will form a majority. It took Republicans. Barry Goldwater went to Richard Nixon and said, we're going to impeach you if you don't resign. Who is the Barry Goldwater of today? Barry Goldwater, who opposed the civil rights movement, went to Nixon, and he was the guy who said, you're gone. Who is the guy? Who's going to do it? McCain? McCain opposes Trump every day, but he still votes for everything Trump wants. Is it going to be Lindsey Graham? I love Lindsey Graham. He's very delightful, but he's not opposing Trump actually, just rhetorically. There isn't a single Republican who'd impeach Donald Trump today. Is Paul Ryan going to do it? No. Is Devin Nunes going to do it? No. So unless you have a Congress that's willing to do something about Donald Trump, and not just impeachment, but even reining him in, it isn't going to happen. And so this is the part where I say where we go from here really depends on Americans, who have to decide whether they want to empower the first branch of government, the Congress, which is the most powerful branch of government, really. And that is really up to voters. Only voters in 2018 can decide who should control the House of Representatives, who should control the Senate, in a sense, who will rein in or not the White House. Because we have a very specific public policy imperative that one party versus the other has in mind. And if you care about what people of color care about and what poor people, including poor white people, care about, then you have a really clear line of action.
You're having an impact, your show, and you personally have an impact in terms of the media and really covering things. And as you said earlier, in terms of looking at what people are actually saying, not just the data. If you could send a message to the media, what would that be? What would you want to see more of happening in the media?
I think the media has to. It sounds odd because media people are fairly cynical, but I think media people need to be more skeptical. There are certain tics that the media has that they don't seem to be able to help. There's this quest for normalcy. The media is like a sort of compass that's forcing itself north all the time. And media people want to find some way to make everything normal, to make every situation normal. But the example that I would give them is that, 10 years ago, Turkey was a normal democratic country. It was a country that got let into NATO because it was a normal democratic country. It's now an autocracy, a completely authoritarian state that jails journalists, that doesn't allow dissent, and that had an attempted coup. That can happen extremely quickly. My husband and I recently visited Cuba, a country that also used to be a totally democratic, open, free society that is not. And democracy is so tenuous, and Americans, I don't think, understand how tenuous it is.
A lot of us are activists, and so we are on the grassroots pounding the pavement, demanding for justice, out there on the forefront at marches, at demonstrations, leading protests.
Well, and as Joy Reid mentioned, which we'll talk a little bit more later about, at the interview that I had done with her on this special day of social work in the city, she actually said it really started with what Martin Luther King was really committed to, was really a form of social work, and he was a social worker. Yeah.
Well, we were so excited when President Barack Obama said he had been an organizer. Every social worker in New York City was like, yay, he's a social worker. And so of course, we know he's an attorney, but yes.
And I just want to go back to something Nzinga had said about that we're on the front lines and demonstrating at rallies and protests, and almost all of us do that in addition to the rest of our jobs.
Exactly.
So we are social workers, we are social activists, we are social justice activists, all at the same time in the largest sense of social work.
And I'd just like to add, because of that, we have a really robust legislative agenda, because we also hit the ground in politics, and we've hired a wonderful lobbyist who actually carries forward our agenda up at the state. And some of the things that are on our agenda are raise the age, which we know just was put into the governor's budget.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because there were recently, from the legislative perspective, in terms of the subcommittee and the committee, a lot of achievements this past year.
Absolutely.
So if you could speak to some of those, that would be great.
Sure. So we are in coalition with other groups. So it's not to say that we only are the supporters, but we are at the forefront of building coalitions and being in coalitions. So Raise the Age is one of the items,
Could you explain that? Yeah. Right.
Which is to, well, there are only 2 states that were left that the age of criminality was 16, and New York happened to have been one of those states. And so the push was to get it so that children, and I will say children because 16-year-olds are children, they're adolescents, but they're children nonetheless, would not be automatically charged as an adult. And that was what the case was prior to this recent victory. And so right now we're looking at children moving into family court systems, children, this is going to take about 2 years. 18, I believe, is the...
2018 is the
right,
cutoff
2018, September, or fall 2018.
And what was the age raised to? Was it
18,
Yeah, it
to
was 18.
actually being
To
an adult.
yeah.
Right, and those of us who work with children and families know that the adolescent brain is not the same as an adult brain. And we all know, if we can think back to when we were 16, that we are nothing like we were when we were 16. We think differently. And so this was part of it. So this was one of our push.
And just to clarify that, in case it's not clear.
Sure.
So prior to this being
Raising
passed,
the
which is
age
going to
bill.
take 2 years, it's going to be implemented in 2018.
In stages.
Right, in stages. That prior to this, in New York and one other state, that children at 16 years old and above, 16 and 17-year-olds, when they committed a crime and they were charged, that they were charged and treated like an adult automatically without any type of consideration.
Exactly.
And so with this, with the efforts of NASW as well as other organizations like the APA and the American Psychological Association, many who are familiar with children and the way, as you mentioned, the way the brain works, that now, in fact, it will be that they will be treated as a minor.
As a minor.
Yes. Okay.
That's right.
Good.
When I think of the NASW NYC chapter, I think about visibility, and I think about promoting and elevating all of the important work that social workers do in all areas of practice throughout the city.
Yeah, and that's great, because I think one of the reasons why I wanted to, for all of you to come on and really highlight social work in the city today for our viewers, is because I think there's a real misconception about social workers, that when oftentimes when you say the word social worker, people have this image of the woman with the briefcase that's going to the home of somebody in inner city and taking the kids away. And and that goes back for many years, but I think still today, after, we've do a lot of different things. I am a social worker, and but I think that people still have that image. So what I'd like to start by talking about is really on a national level, what social workers do in terms of the many roles, and then we'll get into more specifically about what social work in the city and some of the challenges that social social workers face here in New York. And it's interesting because when I was thinking about the history of social work, it goes back a long time. And in terms of education, you mentioned that you just graduated not too long ago from Columbia. And actually, it was in 1898 that Columbia offered the very first course in social work. Yeah. And so that's really interesting. And so can anybody talk a little bit about, just briefly, the historical perspective of social work?
Well, sure. Well, we always say at almost every function that we are born out of the idea that we needed social reform and social justice. And that's where, so in 1868, this is where it came out of. And so Columbia, which is your alma mater, Columbia was the first school of social work to be established. We carry forward into 2017 the idea of social justice and reform. And so when you say that social workers nationally, what do? Is that we are in every system within the United States. If you enter a system, hospital, education, politics, you will find social workers there because of our history as social reformers. And our mantra is that we are change agents. So when we see that the society has gaps for all of the people, then that's where we step in to want to see about how we could organize, how we can make a difference in communities towards that end.
And it's interesting because actually the first woman who was ever elected to Congress happened to be a social worker too.
Yes.
So yeah, we're all over. Yeah,
absolutely.
Right.
And going back to what you were originally talking about that stereotype, which I think we talk a lot about, and which I hear about at every conference I go to. Someone raises that concept, not knowing often that, number one, the person who might have done that wasn't a social worker, but also in the sense of seeing social work as an adversarial position. When, if you look at our code of ethics, part of our mandate is always to advocate rigorously for underserved communities, and that would translate into the present day in terms of any impacted community, any marginalized community. And what we do locally, of course, mirrors what happens nationally in terms of fields of practice. More and more social workers are also present in legal services of any kind, whether it's criminal, whether it's civil, because of an acknowledgement to the fact that we live in a society where all these systems intersect. And so the role of the social worker is key in all of these disciplines.
Yeah.
They let me on one of those lifts, so I'd be driving the lift around and all the guys were just like,
You didn't have a driver's license, right?
No.
You had a green card, but not a driver's license?
No. But they were like, they saw me with the lift. They said, "Oh my God, out of the way!" No, I said it wasn't that bad. But
how did you discover or really find an interest in writing, and then go on to publish some books? Maybe you can talk about that.
Well, I've been writing poetry for many years, and I also, of course, I've written a lot of lyrics. So I decided after my mother passed away, which was 2009, when I came back, just to honor her, I decided I would go ahead and publish my first book. It's called Stardust Transmissions, Poems and Lyrics for the 21st Century. So basically what I did was translated some of the poems and lyrics into different languages. I have one in Swahili.
Interesting.
Sicilian, German, Italian, French, Hindi. And I also had the cyber art of a friend of mine from Los Angeles who unfortunately passed away, Gil Malay. He was an incredible musician and artist. I was living in San Francisco in the Summer of Love, which will be the 50th anniversary this year of the Summer of Love. I was there in Golden Gate Park when Timothy Leary said, tune in, turn on, and drop out. And Jimi Hendrix was there, and the Grateful Dead were there, and Janis Joplin, and Big Brother, and all the big San Francisco bands were there, plus Allen Ginsberg. I was heavily into the beat poets, like Allen Ginsberg, Michael McClure, that whole gang of beat poets. I'm heavily influenced by them.
Thank you for watching Your Voice with Dr. Susan. You can contact us at yourvoice@drsusan.nyc. Thank you.